I did the math standing right there at the kitchen counter, and my legs went numb. 3 years, 36 months. My aunt had been sending my brother $1,800 every single month since I started nursing school, and I had spent the last 3 years eating rice and canned beans twice a day, skipping the bus to walk 4 miles to campus to save the $2.75 fare, and telling my aunt every time she called that things were a little tight, but I was managing. I was not managing. I had worked 2 jobs through nursing school. I'd tutored pre-med students on weekends and waitressed Thursday through Saturday nights at a diner that smelled like grease and cigarette smoke, even though smoking indoors had been illegal in this state for 15 years. I'd deferred a dental appointment for 2 years because I couldn't afford the copay. I had a cavity in my back molar that throbbed every time I drank anything cold, and I'd learned to drink everything at room temperature because the pain wasn't worth the $40. My aunt didn't know any of this, or rather, she thought she was fixing it. That's what she said at Thanksgiving dinner, the words landing like a brick through a window while my brother Marcus sat 3 chairs down with his wife Dina and didn't blink once. "I've been sending Marcus $1,800 every month for you," my Aunt Patricia said, setting down her fork. "For 3 years. He said you needed help with rent and expenses." The table went quiet. My mother stopped mid-reach for the cranberry sauce. My cousin dropped her phone face down on her lap. My brother Marcus picked up his wine glass and took a long, slow sip, and I watched his jaw work the way it did when he was doing calculations in his head. I looked at him. He looked at the tablecloth. "What money?" I said, and my Aunt Patricia opened her purse. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without context. And context is the thing my family had been very carefully keeping from me for 3 years. I am 29 years old. I grew up in a medium-sized city in Ohio, the second of 3 kids. My older brother Marcus is 34. My younger sister Claire is 26. Our parents are decent people who worked hard and didn't have much, which is not a criticism, it's just true. My father drove a delivery truck for 30 years. My mother was a school secretary. We had enough. Not abundance, but enough. My Aunt Patricia is my mother's older sister. She never had children of her own. She married a man named Gerald in her late 30s, and Gerald turned out to be one of those quiet, methodical people who read every financial document twice before signing anything and never bought a car he couldn't pay for outright. Gerald died 4 years ago and left my aunt with a paid-off house in Phoenix, a modest investment portfolio, and the kind of financial stability that feels almost surreal when you've grown up watching your parents argue about the electric bill in February. My aunt loves us, all 3 of us. She has always been the type of aunt who remembered every birthday and asked real questions when she called. Not just how are you, but are you sleeping? Are you eating? Do you have what you need? When I got into the nursing program at my university, she cried on the phone. I could hear her crying even though she was trying to muffle it with her hand. "You're going to be extraordinary," she told me. "I want to help." I told her I was fine. I said the financial aid covered most of it, and I had some savings, and I'd pick up extra shifts if I needed to. I didn't want to take her money. That was genuine. I knew she was comfortable, but I didn't think it was right to lean on her. And I had a stubborn streak about financial independence that I'd been carrying since I was 19 and moved out of my parents' house 2 weeks after graduation. What I didn't know was that my aunt had already called Marcus. This is what she told us at the table, very calmly, while my brother stared at the tablecloth. She'd called Marcus about 3 weeks after I started school because she was worried, and she knew I wouldn't take money directly from her. She said she knew I was proud that way, and she meant it kindly. She thought if she routed the money through Marcus, he could fold it into rent or groceries or gas in a way that seemed natural, so I wouldn't feel like I was being helped. She trusted him because he was my older brother. She trusted him because he'd called her twice that year just to check in on her after Gerald died. She trusted him because he had a good job and a house and a wife, and he seemed, from the outside, like a man who had his life in order. She sent him $1,800 the first month with a note that said, "This is for Nora. Please make sure she has what she needs." He texted back a thumbs-up emoji. She sent $1,800 the second month, then the third, then 12 more after that, then 12 more after that. 36 months. $64,800. Not once did any of it reach me. I want to be precise here, because I have spent a lot of time since that dinner trying to make sure I understand exactly what happened, and the precision matters to me now in a way it didn't before. Before, I was the kind of person who avoided conflict and gave people the benefit of the doubt and told myself that assuming the worst about someone you loved was a character flaw. I don't think that anymore. I think clarity is a form of respect, and the least I can do is be clear. During those 3 years, My brother and his wife, Dina, renovated their kitchen. They put in quartz countertops and a farmhouse sink and a 6-burner gas range that Dina posted about on Instagram 7 times in 1 week. They took a trip to Portugal. They leased a new SUV. They joined a country club, not a fancy one, Marcus clarified to our father once. Just the kind with a pool and a golf course. No big deal. Dina got a new wardrobe that she also posted about extensively. Their bathroom got renovated too. Walk-in shower, heated floors. Meanwhile, I was rationing my contact lens solution by diluting it slightly with distilled water, which my optometrist later told me was genuinely dangerous and could have caused a serious eye infection. I didn't know that at the time. I just knew solution was $12 a bottle and I was trying to make it last. I want to say something here that I've thought about a lot. My brother is not a stupid man. He is actually quite smart, in the specific way that people who are good at rationalization are smart. I think he probably told himself a story about this that made it feel okay. Maybe he thought of it as a loan he'd pay back eventually. Maybe he told himself that I was fine, that I was managing, just like I'd said, and so the money wasn't really needed, and therefore using it wasn't really stealing. Maybe he'd compartmentalized it so thoroughly by the end that Thanksgiving caught him genuinely off guard. Or maybe he just thought he'd never get caught. He had one structural advantage. My aunt and I talked regularly, but we talked about life, not logistics. She never asked me directly, "Did you get the money this month?" Because she thought I didn't know about the money. She thought Marcus was handling it quietly, seamlessly, the way she'd asked. And I never mentioned financial stress to her because I didn't want her to worry. We were talking past each other for 3 years, and my brother lived inside that gap. What changed was my aunt's accountant. My aunt hired a new accountant in September, her old one retired, and a friend recommended this new firm that specialized in estate planning. Part of their onboarding process was a full review of the last 3 years of transactions, just to get a complete picture. The accountant flagged the recurring $1,800 transfers to Marcus as a notable line item and asked my aunt what they were for. She explained. She said it was support for her niece who was in nursing school. The accountant paused and said, "Has your niece confirmed receipt of these funds?" My aunt said she assumed so, that it was going through her nephew. The accountant said, gently, "It might be worth confirming directly." My aunt called Marcus first. She asked, casually, how I was doing financially now that I'd graduated and started working. Marcus said I was doing great, totally stable. The money had really helped. Then she called me. She didn't mention the money. She just asked how the last 3 years had been, really. She asked if nursing school had been as hard financially as she'd worried it would be. And I, because I had no reason to lie and no reason to suspect this was anything other than my aunt checking in, told her the truth. I told her about the 2 jobs. I told her about the bus fare. I told her about the cavity that had needed a root canal by the time I finally got to the dentist 8 months after I graduated. I told her I'd eaten the same 4 meals on rotation for 2.5 years because I'd gotten very efficient with a $60 weekly grocery budget. I laughed a little when I said it. I'd learned to treat it as a story of resilience rather than a source of anger. There was a long silence on the phone. My aunt said, "Baby, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me." I said, "Of course." She said, "Did Marcus ever give you money from me? Any amount, any time, for any reason?" I said no. I said I didn't know what she was talking about. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Okay, I love you. I'll see you at Thanksgiving." She didn't say anything else, but she showed up to Thanksgiving with a folder. I did not know about the folder until she put it on the table. I want to be clear about that because someone is always curious about whether I was in on it. Whether Thanksgiving was a setup? It wasn't, on my end. I drove 3 hours from Columbus with a pecan pie I'd made from scratch and a new sweater I'd bought on sale specifically for the occasion. I was happy. I'd been working as a nurse for 14 months by then, and for the first time in years I could breathe financially, and I was starting to feel something that resembled normal. I had no idea what was coming. My aunt's timing was deliberate. She waited until after the main course, when everyone had wine and the conversation had relaxed into that comfortable post-meal slowness. My mother was talking about a neighbor. My father was telling Claire something about his truck. Marcus and Dina were on their phones with the particular absorbed look of people who've run out of things to say to the people around them. My aunt said, "I've been sending Marcus $1,800 every month for you." I already described what happened right after that. The quiet, the tablecloth, the wine glass. But let me tell you what happened next, because the next 20 minutes are the part I replay. Marcus put his glass down and said, very steadily, "Aunt Patricia, I think there might be some confusion." My aunt opened the folder. It was not a thick folder. It didn't need to be. It was a printed record of 36 bank transfers, each one dated, each one for exactly $1,800, each one going to an account in Marcus's name. Beside each transfer, in a column my aunt's accountant had added, was a notation, no corresponding transfer to Nora's accounts identified. She slid it across the table to my mother. My mother looked at it. Her face changed. Marcus said, "Those transfers were for household expenses. Nora was living with us for part of." "I wasn't," I said. "I never lived with you." Dina looked at Marcus. My mother looked at Marcus. My father, who had not said a word since my aunt started talking, put his fork down very slowly and looked at the table. "Marcus," my mother said, in a voice I hadn't heard her use since we were children. The voice that meant this was not a discussion. "It was a complicated situation," Marcus said. "There were things going on that—" $64,000, my aunt said. She said it quietly. She wasn't performing anger. She was just stating a number. $64,800 over 3 years. I sent it for Nora. I sent it because I was worried about her, and I wanted her to be okay, and I trusted you." The table was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Dina said, "We used some of it for household." "Dina," my father said. That was all he said. Her name. Dina stopped talking. I should tell you something about how I felt in that moment, because people always ask. They expect me to say I was shaking, or crying, or that I screamed, or that I flipped the table, or that I felt a white-hot fury that I could barely contain. Those are the feelings that make for satisfying stories. What I actually felt was cold. Not metaphorically. I felt a physical chill move through me, starting at the back of my neck, and everything became very clear and very still. It was like the moment when you're in a situation that's dangerous and your body decides to stop panicking and start functioning. All the noise went out of my head. I looked at my brother, who I had loved my entire life, who had driven me to the ER once when I was 17 and broke 2 fingers, who used to leave voicemails just to make me laugh, who had made a deliberate choice, 36 times, to take money that was meant for me and spend it on a farmhouse sink and a trip to Portugal. I said, "Did you ever intend to tell me?" He didn't answer. "Even after I graduated," I said. "Even after you knew I'd made it through. Were you ever going to say anything?" He picked up his wine glass again. His hand was steady. I've thought about that steadiness a lot. What kind of person's hand is steady in that moment? "I think," he said, "we should talk about this privately. This isn't the right place." "You made it the right place," my aunt said. "I made it the right place, because privately didn't work." My mother started crying. Not loudly, my mother is not a loud crier. She just got very still and tears moved down her face and she didn't wipe them. My father put his hand on her hand and kept looking at the table. "Here's the thing about my Aunt Patricia that I need you to understand. She is 61 years old, and she taught high school English for 22 years, and she has this quality that I can only describe as absolute composure. She is not cold. She is warm, genuinely warm, but she is composed in a way that means she does not get swept into other people's chaos. Gerald was the same way. I think that's why they worked so well together. She had not come to Thanksgiving to have a dramatic confrontation. She had come to tell the truth in front of everyone who needed to hear it, and she had prepared accordingly. She pulled a second sheet from the folder. She passed it to me. It was a letter from her attorney. I won't describe all the legal language because I'm not qualified to explain it perfectly, and I don't want to get anything wrong, but the substance was this. My aunt had, with her attorney's help, established a fund in my name using an amount equivalent to what had been taken, $64,800 plus interest. It was already set up. It was already mine. All I had to do was sign 2 forms and it would be accessible within 10 business days. "This doesn't fix what happened," my aunt said, "but I want you to have what was always supposed to be yours." I looked at the letter for a long time. I'm not sure how long. The refrigerator kept humming. Marcus said, "Aunt Patricia, I want to be clear that I fully intend to—" "Marcus," my aunt said, "I have already spoken to my attorney about what comes next. That's not your concern right now." He went quiet. Dina said very quietly, "We have a mortgage." I don't know why she said that. I don't know what she expected it to accomplish. Maybe she was trying to offer context, or sympathy, or some framework in which what they'd done became understandable. Maybe she was panicking and it was the first thing that came out. My father looked up at her for the first time since she'd tried to speak earlier. He said, "Nora had a cavity for 2 years that turned into a root canal because she couldn't afford to go to the dentist. You have a mortgage? Dina looked at the table. Claire, my younger sister, who had been absolutely silent through all of this, with the focused stillness of someone trying to absorb everything correctly, reached under the table and found my hand. She squeezed it once. I squeezed back. I want to tell you what happened after, because the after is what matters. My aunt did speak to her attorney. The attorney sent a formal letter to Marcus outlining the situation and requesting full repayment. Marcus hired his own attorney, which I learned later cost him approximately $8,000. There were several months of back and forth that I was not directly involved in because my aunt handled it and she is, as I said, composed in a way I aspire to. The outcome was a repayment agreement. Marcus is paying back the full amount over 7 years. He did not go to jail, and I have complicated feelings about that which I've been working through in therapy. My aunt's attorney explained that pursuing criminal charges was possible, but would be long, expensive, and emotionally costly, and she wanted me to have the choice. I thought about it for a long time. I decided what I needed, more than punishment, was distance and financial stability, and I made my peace with that, mostly. Marcus and I have not spoken since Thanksgiving. My parents have spoken to him because he is their son and they love him even though they are furious with him, and I understand that even when it hurts. Claire is on my side in the way that younger sisters are sometimes on your side completely and without qualification, which is a gift I don't take lightly. The money my aunt set up for me, I used in pieces. Some of it paid off a student loan that had an interest rate that kept me up at night. Some of it went into savings. Some of it I used to finally see a real financial advisor for the first time in my life, a woman who sat with me for 2 hours and helped me understand exactly where I stood and what I could build toward. I cried in her office. She handed me a tissue and said, "Okay, let's start from here." I started from there. I want to say something about my Aunt Patricia, because she's the part of this story I think about the most, and she deserves more than a footnote. After all of this settled, I called her on a Sunday afternoon when I was sitting on my apartment balcony with coffee, just a regular Sunday, the kind of Sunday I would not have had 2 years ago because 2 years ago I was working weekends. I called her because I wanted to say thank you in a way that wasn't wrapped up in the chaos of everything else. I wanted to say it plainly. I said, "You didn't have to do any of this. You didn't have to investigate, or prepare that folder, or come to Thanksgiving ready. You could have called Marcus, gotten some excuse, and let it go." Most people would have let it go. She was quiet for a moment. She said, "I sent you that money because I loved you, and I wanted you to be okay. When I found out you weren't okay, and that my money had something to do with that, even though it wasn't my fault, I had to fix it, not for legal reasons. Because you're mine, and what's mine doesn't get taken." I sat with that for a while. "Also," she said, "Gerald always told me, document everything, trust your gut, and when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." I believed Marcus for 3 years, and that was my mistake. I don't make mistakes twice. I laughed, and she laughed, and then we talked about her garden and a book she'd just finished and a series on television she wanted me to watch. We talked for 2 hours about nothing important, which is the kind of conversation I think I had been starving for without knowing it. There's a version of this story where I end it with a lesson, some clean summary about family or money or trust. I've resisted that, partly because I'm not sure the lesson is simple enough to summarize cleanly. There's something in here about the way love gets weaponized when people know you'll protect a relationship at your own expense. There's something about the particular cruelty of stealing not in anger but in cold calculation, 36 times over, while looking at your face at Christmas and asking how school was going. There's something about older relatives who love you enough to do the uncomfortable thing, the prepared thing, the thing that costs them a family dinner and a nephew and the illusion of a peaceful holiday. But mostly what I think about is this. I walked 4 miles to campus every day for 2.5 years to save $2.75. I ate rice and beans and I diluted my contact solution and I worked Thursday through Saturday nights in a diner and I told everyone I was managing. And I was managing. I made it through nursing school. I became a nurse. I did that. The money wouldn't have made me, but it would have made it easier. And I was robbed of easier. And I'm allowed to be angry about that without it taking away what I built. I'm angry about it. I'm also okay. Both of those things are true at the same time, and I'm learning to let them coexist. I signed the forms my aunt's attorney prepared. The money cleared in 9 business days. I put half of it into a high-yield savings account, and I stared at the balance on my phone for probably 10 minutes before I closed the app. It was the most money I had ever seen attached to my name, and it felt strange, and also correct, the way things feel when they are late in arriving, but arrive nonetheless. My aunt called to make sure it went through. It did, I said. Good, she said. Now stop checking it every 5 minutes and go live your life. I'm not checking it every 5 minutes. You checked it 3 times while we've been on the phone. I had, in fact, checked it twice. I did not correct her. She sent me a plant for my apartment last month. A big, dramatic bird of paradise that required a specific watering schedule she included in a handwritten note. She signed it the way she signs everything. With all my love, always Aunt Patricia. I put it by the window in the corner where it gets the morning light. It's doing fine. I'm doing fine. And the next time someone I love asks if I need help, I'm going to tell them the truth.